Hey, Misty.
Hey, Amarilys.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I am so mad at you for making me watch this movie.
I am mad at myself.
I am so angry with you.
Well, the reason I picked it was because I was like, it's new. A lot of people are going to be wanting to watch it and talk about it. And so, and plus, like, we love to stand up against the man. So.
Yes.
Right?
Sure. We do like to stand up against the man.
Knock somebody out over my kid.
Well, that's something that we're definitely going to talk about when we get into it, because I could definitely relate to Beata.
Oh.
For sure.
Yeah.
She was something else.
Yeah. But, we'll talk about it when we talk about it. But how's your week been?
It's okay. It's just kind of, same old, same old. Now, I will say this. My mom's been here for about a month.
Yeah.
And she went home today.
Aww.
I know. She, when she's here, she keeps Nova entertained.
Oh, man.
She buys Catalina presents.
She cooks.
Man. She washes Nova's clothes. Mm-hmm. And, she's my mom, so it's just nice that she's here around, to have around.
Yeah.
But she went home today. She had to go home. She lives in Atlanta.
Yeah.
With my sister.
Well, so I had strep this week. That was fun.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You almost missed your solo.
I had the strep throat. Almost missed my solo, but I pulled through.
I was ready. I was ready.
And I sang it, except there was a high part. I sounded horrible on it. But the rest of it I killed. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You heard it, so you can confirm.
I can confirm. Well, I really can't hear it from where we are.
Oh, really?
From that back.
Well,
yeah.
Too bad for you.
Yeah.
It was great. The rest of it was. That just one little high part, my throat was still so sore.
Yeah.
And I just could not. I couldn't
Happens
do it.
to the best of us.
It was a struggle. But you know what? I feel like sometimes things like that happen so other people feel better about themselves. Because they're like, oh,
I was hoping it would happen and our worship guy would say, well, this one is better suited for Amarilys.
Probably not. No.
But he didn't.
No.
He's listening to this right now.
Yeah. But also, let's see what else happened. Oh, an old man in Walmart said that I was prettier than the 4th of July.
Well, that is pretty.
I know. And I said...
That's pretty.
And I said, thank you. And then I kept my eye on him the rest of the time.
Did he drive a white van?
Most definitely.
Okay.
He definitely had that vibe.
Yeah,
like white,
for sure.
White van vibe. And like we weren't even standing in the same aisle. Mm-hmm. Like this is how I know like I'm holding up pretty good that people still want to abduct me. Is like we just passed each other in like the main aisle, and he stopped and he said, "You are prettier than the 4th of July." And I said, "Well, thank you."
What parts of 4th of July, sir?
He was about 87, but it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, which made me feel better because I was like, I can take him if he tries to follow me out in my car. It's going to be okay. Yeah, it's going to be all right. So, and then Eli
oh my gosh,
has discovered the love of puzzles.
This is amazing.
And you know what I used to think? I used to think people who do puzzles are super boring, but he's not boring.
No.
And so I know that that's a stereotype, and I should be ashamed of myself.
I hardly ever do puzzles. Rarely. I can't even remember the last time. But when I have done them, they're really fun.
I do not have the attention span.
Well, that's the thing is when you do them, somehow you're captivated by it.
Really?
This summer, Catalina, not this summer. Yeah, maybe during the summer, it was during Christmas break. She pulled out, we have a few of them around here, and she pulled them out and just did them on her floor. And she's a teenager.
Yeah, well, here's the problem with my fellow ADHD survivors is we're captivated by everything.
I understand.
And so as soon as I get captivated by that, something walks by me and I'm captivated by that. And
I
so
understand.
then I get up. Philip calls me 90%, which means I'll finish everything up to 90%, and then I will not finish that 10%.
I understand.
So
yeah, I can relate.
Yeah.
I can relate. But that's pretty amazing that little Eli has been.
He loves them. He did 6 100-piece puzzles today.
That's crazy. I
was like, man, if I could find a way to monetize this.
I know. What if he becomes like Max from Speed Cubers, but it's puzzles?
Do you know, that's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, what if we have unlocked his talent and he can put together puzzles faster than anybody?
Oh, my word. There's got to be
a competition.
Okay, Max's dad, we think you're still listening.
Please, God.
Can you please look into this for us?
Please look into it.
Have you given him a Rubik's Cube? Misty, give that boy a Rubik's Cube.
I did. He peeled all the stickers off. I got him one right after we did Speed Cubers, and he straight up peeled all them stickers off.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a
Okay, well, that's not his gift.
It's not, yeah.
That's not his gift.
You can't have everything.
There has to be competitive puzzling.
Surely.
Puzzling.
Surely.
Is that how you guys say it?
Yeah.
I meant to tell you, speaking of my mother, she has started listening to all our episodes.
What?
Now, listen, my mother is a Cuban immigrant. English is her second language, and she doesn't always catch everything that we say.
Well, people who speak English don't catch everything.
That's exactly right. But she said that we speak clearly, and that a lot of times she doesn't understand what we're laughing at, but because we're laughing so hard at each other, she starts laughing along with us.
Oh, I love her.
She's a night owl.
I'm too.
And so she said she just puts her earbuds in. She's 82. She puts her earbuds in and she just starts listening to us.
I love her.
And then she would come out here in the mornings and want to discuss the documentaries with me.
Really? Oh. You know what's funny is I never know what to call people's mothers. Because, you know, some people, like here in the South, a lot of people like to be called Miss. Maybe it's their first name.
Yeah.
Like a lot of kids will call me Miss Misty, or you know, some people are like, "Oh no, you need to call me Miss Gillespie," or like some people do the first namers. I never know what to call people's mothers because I never want to like offend anybody. So I always say mother and then their child that I'm friends with name. So I call your mom Mother Amarilys. Yeah.
You could call her by her first name. She would be totally fine with that.
Really?
Oh gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
It feels disrespectful.
Fun story, and then we'll get to talking about this documentary.
Okay.
My dad never liked for people to say sir to him because it's cultural. I mean, saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am is very Southern. Other parts of the country don't do that.
Like, every time Avery goes to meet somebody's parents, I'm like, if you don't say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir.
We were not taught that.
I'm going to knock you out.
I mean, we talked about how I grew up. I mean, I grew up in the culture gap.
Yeah.
At school, I was always made to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. But at home, my parents were like, that's not what we do, so you don't have to do that. Of course, we spoke in Spanish, too, but they didn't make us do that to other people. My dad didn't like to be ma'amed or didn't like to be sir.
Really?
Because he felt like it made him sound like he was in the military.
Oh.
And that does not bring up good connotations when you come from a communist country.
Oh.
And so it felt like it also made him feel inaccessible to people, like he was better or higher up than somebody. And he definitely never was like that.
Yeah.
So we were never ever taught to say yes ma'am or yes sir. Like, I can compartmentalize. It's called code switching. When usually you hear it when it comes to like a different race, like black community versus the white community, where the black community has to code switch from their culture when they're going into a job where it's majority white, or they're code switching. Well, I had to code switch my whole life because I would go to my Cuban household and we would be talking in a particular way, but then I would go to my very Southern Christian school and I'd have to yes ma'am and yes sir, and it would be super different, code switching constantly.
Yeah, I have to code switch when I go to Hoover.
There's a big difference.
That's where I used to have to go to school in elementary school, and I was raised in Shannon, so you know, you have to act a little more high class when you get there. So yeah,
a lot of code switching.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about Take Care of Maya.
Oh my goodness.
You want to, or do you just want to give up and just?
Hey, listen.
Let's just shut it down.
This is On the Doc.
I'm Amarilys.
And I'm Misty.
We watch documentaries, so you don't have to. And boy, let me tell you, are we doing you a favor this week?
Because we love to hear ourselves talk.
We do. We do love to hear ourselves talk more than anything in this whole world.
P.S. If you suffer with depression, go pop one, because this is sad.
No, avoid this documentary.
Or yeah, that's even better.
Avoid it. Don't watch it.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's an eye opener, and I can promise you, I'm never taking my child to the ER ever again.
Oh,
will never happen.
No.
And I'm considering never taking them to a doctor. Period.
Well, yeah.
And I come from a medical family.
I mean, yeah, but you like those oils, those snake oils.
That'll heal them. That'll heal them.
That'll be fine.
I certainly look. My nephew broke his toe earlier this week. And he also had massive giant bruises on his leg from just being a boy in the summertime and,
oh yeah,
you know, just kind of getting into his own messes. And
I have bruises all the time.
when my sister messaged us to, tell us we're at urgent care, and I was like, look at his legs. They're going to call. I had just finished watching this. I had just finished watching this, and I was like,
you're like, wrap that baby up
you
in a blanket
need to
and
leave.
put him in the car.
Sneak out.
Goodbye. Tell them that you forgot something in the car and get his tail out of there.
He's the only one that can find it and get the heck out of there.
Out of Dodge.
Because he had, the bruises on his legs were just enormous. And she said that, she told my mom, she didn't tell me this. She told my mom that they did question him. They were like, tell me how you got this again. And she had to say, go ahead and tell him, because tell him exactly what happened, because this is the reason that sometimes parents get put in jail.
Right.
Not to put any pressure on you, 10-year-old son.
But get it right or I pay the price.
Yeah, but she said that they told her that if his bruises had been on his arms, that would have been a telltale sign of abuse. But because it wasn't on his arms, and I guess also because he was talking so naturally about what had actually happened.
Well, good thing they never took me to the ER when I was in high school, because I was a majorette and I had bruises on my arms constantly.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, because you're catching a baton, and when you miss, it hits you in the arms and the shoulders.
A couple years ago.
Or the face.
A couple years ago, we had a cat who was horrible. It was a feral cat that we found it as a kitten, but you can take the feral out of the cat, but you can't take, I can't say that right. You know what I mean? Like, it was feral.
You can take the cat out of the feral, but you can't take the feral out of the cat.
Thank you, Misty.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And we tried so hard to make that cat part of our family, but it was terrible. It hated being held, it hated being touched. And when you would try to touch it, it would bite you. And it especially hated Nova, my little one.
Oh, yeah.
And one day, and she constantly had scratches all over her. In fact, we tried to put it like the kitty nails on them. Have you seen those?
Oh, yeah.
Like the kitty nail covers. And that worked for a long time. Yeah. Getting them on her was a nightmare. So anyway, I watched Nova walk down the hallway one day, and Toonces was right at the corner here and stalked her. Toonces, the driving cat. Toonces stalked her, and when she came down, I watched Toonces grab her by the neck. Like pounced on her, and I was like, okay, we're done.
Well, that cat is just like Natalia.
Yes.
She didn't want to be a Barnett either.
That is.
And she tried to drag somebody in an electric fence. So
it was very similar.
Sometimes you got to just attack
very
somebody.
Very similar. But the house across the street caught fire one day.
Oh.
And apropos of nothing here. No, the house across the street caught fire. And, of course, the firemen were here and police, and so I was at home with Nova, and I said, let's go watch all this go down. And so we were in the street. The policeman came up, because she's this little girl that he just came to say hello to. First thing he noticed was the scratches on her legs. And I was like, crap, I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail right now.
All we wanted to do was be looky-loos.
That's right.
And look what it got us.
In jail.
In jail.
And he totally got down on his knees, and he said, well, look at your legs. What happened? And I was like, oh, crap.
Oh, no.
And I let her answer. I didn't answer for her. And she said, my cat scratched me. And I just was like, please, Lord, let this be enough of an explanation for this. And it was.
Yeah.
It was scary for just a few minutes, though. I was like, he's going to totally take me to jail. So when I'm watching this movie, I'm getting, like, by the time it was over, Misty, no kidding, I really needed a cocktail. It was like my face was puffy. I'd been crying the whole time. It was so horrific what this family went through.
It's terrible.
Unbelievable. Okay, so let's jump in.
The name of the documentary is Take Care of Maya. It's on Netflix, and it's pretty new. It's maybe
it's brand new. Yeah,
a week or so. Yeah. You've got Maya, of course, who's the daughter. They have a son named Kyle. Jack is the father, and then mother's name is, tell me if I pronounce this correct, Beata. I cannot tell you how long I had this as Miata until about halfway through, and I said, I think he's saying a V.
Or your Polish is not very good.
Yeah, it was not. My Polish is not good. Yeah.
She's a smart lady. She put herself through nursing school. She came from communist Poland when she was 12 years old, put herself through nursing school, and she went to Loyola, which is like a really nice, really great prestigious school. So she was a smart chick. And Maya, their oldest, they've got two, like you said, but Maya was the oldest, and she was born after like a struggle with infertility.
Right.
Like a long time. So it was like this life that was wanted from even before she was ever born. I mean, they fought for her.
Right.
And they had this idyllic home and family. You know, they had these two beautiful children, and you know, isn't this how all these documentaries always start? It's just this idyllic life, and then something happens and it just blows everything up. So all of a sudden, Maya starts getting sick. I'm not sure about how old she was. I think she was like about 8 years old when it started happening. I remember thinking she was about Nova's age.
Yeah, she was about, well, it started in 2015. And so by the time 2016 hit, she was 10. So she would have been 8 or 9 when it kind of started.
So she starts getting sick. And now this is sudden onset.
Right.
Okay, she's totally fine. And then suddenly, pain, lethargy, breathing problems, headache, blurred vision, could not walk. Her little feet were getting turned in like they were pigeon-toed, but like not just pigeon-toed, completely turned. Exactly. It was really terrible to even look at the pictures of what she was going through.
And she would even get physical signs like these red breakouts that would bleed and look crazy, which, I mean, if you are somebody who's ever, I have an autoimmune disorder, and so if you ever have been someone.
Is it that small one that nobody's ever heard of? Lupus?
This is an uncommon one. No, mine actually is kind of.
I know. I'm just.
So I have something called connective tissue disease, and so my connective tissue, I have an antibody that attacks it, and so I have a lot of different symptoms, but. Like, as I'm watching this documentary, I could so relate because you have all these crazy symptoms that don't make any sense, and people kind of look at you like you're nuts, okay? And now she's a child, and thank God, like, her parents listened to her and believed her. But even, like, my onset, my particular autoimmune disease doesn't rear its head normally until your adult years. It's usually brought on by something traumatic, some traumatic medical event. I had shingles.
Oh, interesting.
And so that's what sparked all of mine. When they were showing all this stuff, so with mine, all of a sudden, I just had severe joint pain. I'd get to where I couldn't, like, move my arms above my head.
Oh, my goodness.
I would have just horrible lethargy, like I just was tired all the time. I would have constant headaches. And then I started having these like whelps break out on me. And it was so weird because all of a sudden, because they were saying with her, like she would describe it as like my skin is burning. And that's how it felt. Like it would be a spot on my leg or a spot on my arm. And all of a sudden, it would just start itching and burning. And I would think, like, the first time it happened, I thought, oh, my God, I've gotten into, like, poison oak or something. But then I was like, I don't go outside. So, like, how'd I get that?
Definitely not poison oak.
I don't go in the yard. As it progressed, like, it was unbearable. Literally, I would put ice on it. I would put all this.
Oh, my goodness.
I would sit in the bathtub. I tried to put, like, eczema cream on it. It would get worse and worse. By the next day, it would look like what a hickey would look like. Like a really deep bruise from just nowhere. I didn't hit myself. I didn't hurt myself. It's just like something within my skin was inflamed.
Oh, my goodness.
I would just have this inflammatory response. And so when I saw that, I was like, I cannot imagine being that age. I remember how miserable I was before. And it took me about 2 years to get diagnosed. And I still have.
Wow.
Yeah, it took me about 2 years to get diagnosed. And I still have flare-ups. And, like, there's even times I'll tell Amarilys, like, I'm having a flare-up. I just can't do it today. But
I'll tell her all the time it's in her head.
Yeah, and she's like, hey, crazy, get on over here.
Yeah. Now I know you should just take ketamine.
If I could just take ketamine. They didn't offer me ketamine, but they did offer me some drug that they said, hey, this might make you go blind. And I said,
pass.
And I said, no thanks.
Pass.
But anyway, thankfully, through some more natural alternatives, I've been able to, deal with mine. I mean, I still have pain. I still have flare-ups and things. It's just, it's one of those things of either you take the medicine and you deal with the side effects, or you deal with the lifestyle change that causes you, or you find some more natural alternatives like diet and exercise and different things that kind of help alleviate the flare-ups, kind of help them not be as severe, and you just deal with it, you know, which is what I chose to do because I did not like how I felt.
You did not want to go blind.
I did not want to go blind. Number
That's
one,
fair.
I love looking at myself. I love it. And I love looking at other people.
Apparently, 87-year-old men love to look at you.
It's prettier than 4th of July. And so I just wanted to go that route because I didn't like how I felt on the medicine. But being that young, I was just like, how in the world?
How's she handling this?
And how do you watch your baby go through that?
That's the worst part, right?
Yeah, because it's chronic pain.
Let me tell you about Beata, though. She was a warrior for this little girl. She took her to every specialist you could come up with. I mean, it was just one appointment after another. But let me tell you what I love most about Beata is that she recorded every doctor's visit.
Yes, she did. And she took notes.
I mean, that's amazing.
Girlfriend. Yeah.
That is fantastic. I've done that before.
Oh, I have to.
Where I record the doctor.
Oh, I'll straight up record somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will. Yes. It's never been a situation where like this, where it's been something negative or, but where I have 2 sisters and we tag team taking care of our parents. And if one of us has to take them to the doctor, I will record everything the doctor says so that I can send it to them so that they know exactly, because I know I'll forget or maybe I didn't understand something.
Oh, yeah. Well, and especially when you're dealing with something that, even though she was a nurse, she's not a doctor. And so, you know, especially when you're dealing with something like this where you're going to multiple doctors.
Yeah.
And again, like...
And being told different things, I'm sure, because nobody could diagnose her.
Right.
Everybody was like, what the heck is this? We have no idea what this is.
Right. Different things. And especially medical with a child, everybody's scared they're going to think you got Munchausen's, you know?
Yes.
And so she was really smart to do that. And eventually... she did find somebody.
She did. She found a doctor. His name is Dr. Kirkpatrick. He's an anesthesiologist, and he came up with a diagnosis. It's something called complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS, and it's something that almost no physicians know anything about. It's super duper rare, and nobody knows anything about it.
Listen, us in the autoimmune community, we love to use the letters. I love to say MCTD, mixed connective tissue disease.
That's so inside. It's like...
it makes you sound really smart.
Right.
And then when you're like, hey, don't mess with me. Like, my MCTD is messing up. Like, people will be like, they don't want to ask you, and and they don't want to be like, oh, am I going to sound dumb if I don't know what that is? And they're like, oh, girl, bless your heart.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, yeah, it's bad today.
It's bad today.
So unless you want to catch it, I'd get away from me.
And leave me alone.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me.
And don't ask me to go on that field trip. I don't want to.
I can't.
I can't do it.
I definitely can't volunteer.
I'm not volunteering.
Nope.
No. How about
I wish
volunteer?
I had that.
How about volunteer to come to my house and do stuff for me?
I wish I had an autoimmune disorder.
No, you do not. Friends, send your emails to Amarilys. I did not say that.
You're so lucky.
You're so lucky. Well, now I'm not going to lie to you. I don't.
Do you have a handicap sticker?
No, but I could have one.
Look, why do you not get one?
Well, I really do think about it during Christmas. And I go, why didn't I do that? But now I do use it with
There's so many perks of an autoimmune disease.
There really is. I do use it with my husband because part of mine is short-term memory loss, which is why I have to watch these documentaries right before I come to your house. So
not for any other reason.
So please don't come at me with that. That is part of my disease. And so
my MCTD.
That is my favorite thing to use with him is when he comes home and he'll be like, hey, I asked you to do so-and-so. And I'll be like, I'm sorry, I have a disease.
My MCTD.
Or he'll be like, hey, can you guys do so-and-so? And I'll be like, oh, I wish I could. My disease is flaring up.
Is that what it's called? MCTD?
Uh-huh.
MCTD.
Mixed connective tissue disease.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll remember that next time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say anything like I'm a hero, but kind of.
Do you have your own color ribbon?
I do. It's tie-dyed because it's mixed. Only I can joke about it, Amarilys. You can't. Don't laugh.
All right, we'll share ribbons. We should start a merch store and add tie-dye ribbons.
I also have a deformed heart valve if we want to talk about that too. Why is that funny?
Because now you're telling them all your stuff.
Do y'all want to know my medical history?
Would y'all like to know her mother's maiden name?
Would y'all like to know my medical history? The date of my last period was.
How many babies have you had? How many successful pregnancies? How many?
Oh,
et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, folks. So Dr. Kirkpatrick, an anesthesiologist, diagnoses little Maya with CRPS, which is good news and bad news, right? The bad news is she's got this disease. The good news is we have found an answer.
Yeah.
So he says the very best treatment out there is ketamine.
And it's kind of still in the experimental stage, so you're going to have to go to Mexico.
That's right. It says it stimulates the brain and it resets everything. Do you know anything about ketamine?
Do you know what ketamine is?
Well, I thought it was like
it's an animal tranquilizer.
Is it? I thought it was like a hallucinogenic.
Well, I mean, it is for humans, but
I always think, like, when I hear ketamine, and I just, full disclosure, I don't know anything about it other than the name ketamine.
I know they do use it for humans, but I know from what I can understand is that it was predominantly used for animals. Ketamine is.
I thought it was like ayahuasca.
And I think on the streets they call it Special K.
Really?
I don't know.
I don't know. Did you just make that up?
I think I saw it in a movie.
You sure they're not talking about cereal?
Listen, nothing we say on this is accurate.
Not one thing.
Not one thing. Please do not fact check us, okay?
No. Oh, my gosh.
But if you do...
We should have a whole segment at the very end.
But if you do, send us an email and explain it really well, and then we'll read it.
And be nice.
And be nice, and we'll like you. But if you're not going to... Don't come at me.
Yeah, don't come at us.
Because
I don't know anything about... Like, in my mind, it is like ayahuasca, those hallucinogenics that you do in South American jungles, and they reset your brain. Or even psilocybin, which is... They're doing... Well, it's a psychedelic. And I think that's what they call it, right? Psychedelics. Mm-hmm. And it resets your brain, and it's a good thing. I mean, that would be if you're under doctor's care. And so he said this is the very best thing for it. But yeah, you can't do it here. The thing she needs to do is she has to have such a high dose of ketamine to reset her brain, because this is neurological. It needs to reset her brain. It has to be such a high dose that she's going to be in a 5-day coma.
Right.
And it's experimental, and it's only done in Mexico. There's a chance of death, but it's worth the risk.
That's what I'm asking Philip for Mother's Day next
year. A 5-day coma?
5-day coma. Yep.
That's actually fantastic.
Like, rent me a room at the Ross Bridge. Give me some ketamine.
Ross Bridge, Cancun, because you can't do it here.
Okay. I forgot. I got to go to Mexico.
Yeah.
Now I want to be medically monitored.
Of course.
I don't want to die.
No.
You know.
Now, there is a chance of death.
But like some good sleep. Because, you know, I got
Michael Jackson tried that.
I got that insomnia.
You know, that's how Michael Jackson died.
Well, maybe
Trying to get sleep, they would give him propofol.
Maybe I won't take
it. Do you know what propofol is? Propofol is what they use in surgery to put you under.
Propofol is what they gave Michelle Pfeiffer in What Lies Beneath. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I saw that in the movie theater 1,000 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that movie.
I haven't seen it. I just remember seeing her in that bathtub.
That's why I check Philip's hands before he goes to bed at night.
You should.
Make sure he's not trying to dose me.
With ketamine or no propofol?
I mean,
with propofol.
Who knows?
Yeah, he's got it in him.
Antifreeze.
He's got it in him.
You never know. Shifty eyes.
So they go to Monterrey, Mexico in 2015, and the coma is induced. Also, it was horrific to watch this. To see that baby have hallucinations. It was really difficult to watch.
It was hard to watch, but it was not as extreme as I thought it would be. Like, when they said they're going to put her down for 5 days, I mean...
You're thinking she's asleep for 5 days, but they would bring her in and out.
Yeah, I'm thinking she's out. And then when you come out...
They have a different definition of coma.
Yeah, and, you know, a lot of people react differently when they come out of anesthesia. Like, have I ever told you the story about Philip coming out of anesthesia?
No, but I can't wait to hear it.
So Philip had to have sinus surgery, and we take him to the hospital, and he's in recovery. And so my mother had come with me because it was pretty early on in our marriage, and like we were teenagers, so we didn't know what we were doing. And so she was like, well, I'll go with you. And I said, okay. And so they bring him back into recovery, and they're like, hey, you can come back and see him. And I said, okay. And I had never seen somebody come out from under anesthesia before.
Oh, gosh.
And so I told my mother, I was like, well, let's go back there and see him. And she was like, oh, okay. So she walks back there with me, and he's just like, I mean, like he's coming out of it, like he's awake, but he's really groggy,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, how do you feel? And he was like, I don't know, like, I'm just, like, I'm itching. Like, I itch everywhere. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, like, I'm itching so bad. And so he's, like, scratching. And I see him start to go underneath his blanket.
Oh, gosh.
And he was itchy somewhere private.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts going to town.
With your mom right there?
And my mother is standing right there. And I go, Philip, stop. And he goes, I can't. Like, it itches so bad. And I said, stop doing that. And he was like, you don't understand how bad it's itching. And my mother is, like, dying over in the corner. And I said, Philip, my mother is here.
Was she embarrassed or was she laughing?
I think a little bit of both.
Okay.
And he was like, oh, my gosh. Like, once he came to, at the moment, he was like,
I don't care.
He was like, well, I am itching. And I was like, okay, horrible.
Oh, my gosh.
Horrible.
That's funny.
Like, he can't even look at her in the eye still to this day.
To this day.
To this day. Can't look at her in
Well,
the eye.
little Maya did keep coming in and out, but the treatment was successful.
Yeah.
She came back home and she was living a normal life again. Things had sort of straightened themselves out and things were going great for a year.
Yeah.
And then she relapsed. And it was in the middle of a hurricane. And
they live in Florida.
They live in Florida. That's right. And it was in the middle of a hurricane. She had this horrible episode. And Beata was working. She's a nurse, remember?
Right.
So she was working and she was on the phone the whole time with them. And so Dad was like, I cannot let her be hurting like this. It was severe pain. Whatever she was going through, he was like, I've got to take her to the hospital. So he took her to ER. And the nurses were like, well, so you're giving her ketamine? Because they're still giving her ketamine at home. They're not putting her in a coma, but that's how they're treating it.
But it's pain management.
That's right. That's right. And they'd never even heard of CRPS.
Mm-hmm. They'd
never even heard of it. And they were like, why are you giving her ketamine? Well, Beata knew that what would work, but so they, because the nurses had never heard of CRPS and they were like, why are you giving her ketamine? We're not going to give her ketamine. Beata was like, a nurse, and she said this is the only thing that works. And people at Johns Hopkins, all children's hospital, which is where they were, nobody believed it.
Well, and she was like, you can even call our doctor. Like,
That's right.
I'm not making this up. I don't write prescriptions. Like, this is what her doctor has said that we should do.
That's right. So the hospital becomes suspicious.
Yeah. And
they're like, we've never even heard of this disease, and you're giving her ketamine? That seems really strong. And you're saying that this is the only thing that helps? This is really weird. So they send in this lady named Sally Marie Smith, Dr. Sally Smith. She comes in and she starts asking questions. And it turns out that she's the, quote, abuse physician.
Right. Well, because they were getting antsy because her parents were like, forget this. Like, we're about to leave.
Mm-hmm.
If y'all aren't going to help her, we're going to leave. And they're like, whoa. Like, let's let one more doctor come in. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being that lady.
The abuse physician. So she talked to them for about 10 minutes, and then she left, and they said, FYI, your child is now in custody of the hospital.
Yes.
They were suspecting Beata of Munchausen by proxy.
Right.
We've been through this before, Munchausen with Mommy Dearest.
Oh, Rosie Rose.
Mommy Dead and Dearest.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was her name?
Oh,
Gypsy Rose?
Gypsy Rose. Yep.
This was the opposite of what happened with Gypsy Rose.
This is so much the opposite, like, it's not even funny.
It's not even funny. It's horrible. So 10-minute interview, the hospital takes custody of the child, and they also accuse little Maya of faking. She's like 10 years old by now, and they're like, you are a master performer.
Yeah, and again, like, Beata is so smart because as soon as she gets there, she starts recording again.
Mm-hmm.
And they play this during the documentary, these recordings, and you hear this poor baby, and she goes, Mama, I promise, like, it's not anxiety.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, she's just this is anxiety. Like, this is how it manifests.
It's in her head.
Yeah, it's in her head.
Just like yours,
Or
Misty.
I think she wants your... I will jump over this table.
You can't. You're having a flare-up.
I can't. My legs won't work. But, like, she was going, hey, this is not fake. Like, and they even said, well, we kind of think it might be because she wants her mother's attention.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're so smart.
Whenever I want attention, I will scream out in pain.
That's right. And I'll make my legs turn in, and I'll stop walking.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I'll do all these things.
And then I can also just manifest these, like,
splotches.
lesions on
That's right.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, lesions. That's the other thing. She had a ton of lesions. So what we find out is that they only have to have probable cause. They don't really have to have proof of anything. They just have to think that this is happening.
Right.
They just have to think that it's happening. So children in Pinellas County, turns out that children in Pinellas County, where this hospital is, are 2.5 times more likely than anywhere else in the state to be removed by Children's Protective System services.
And one of the reasons that is because in Florida, child welfare is privately run.
Yeah.
And so
They can do what they want.
do whatever they please.
That's right.
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting, something that one of the advocates said, that Children's Protective Services started back in the 70s for serious abuse because there were situations where children were being terribly abused.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was just physical abuse. They were just saying that's sort of how the whole thing started, was to catch physical abuse, right? And now there's medical abuse,
right?
Which is can be so subjective, right?
Right.
But they're like, no, this is what's happening. So we're taking your child.
Yeah.
Taking your child from perfectly good families, and it what it does is it accuses parents of mental illness, and it's using their kids for their own benefit. But Beata wasn't doing that. Beata was doing the opposite of that. She was advocating for her child. She was and they just didn't believe her.
Well, because she told them, she was like, what you're giving her, I think they were giving her Ativan, which is a sleeping medication.
Yep, it's anti-anxiety. Yep.
Yeah, they were like, hey, this is not what she needs. Like, she needs pain medicine.
Well, Dr. Kirkpatrick called Dr. Sally Smith. Okay, these are two physicians talking to each other. Dr. Kirkpatrick is a specialist. Like, he is a known specialist in this disease. And he said, because the Kowalskis were like, hey, Dr. Kirkpatrick, can you call the hospital and let them know that we're not crazy?
Right.
And so he called her directly to tell her what was happening, and sadly left it off the report.
Oh, yeah.
She did not include that she had talked to him in their report.
She's like, oh,
she's the worst.
I don't recall that. And actually, when they did a background check on her, she had been suspected of child abuse.
On her own. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
She made me more angry than anything, because later on, when we look at her in depositions,
she
was unapologetic.
She was awful.
She never admitted any wrongdoing, ever. She was horrible.
And so basically the hospital says, look, your child's under state's custody. We need y'all to leave. Like, you
can't even talk to her.
You can't even talk to her. We're going to set a hearing for tomorrow, and then you can go and talk to the judge, because as of right now, like, she can't have contact with either one of you anymore.
That's right.
So imagine you've just taken your kid to the ER in horrible pain, and you leave, and they have said, hey, guess what? We have custody of your kid now.
Now, here's the deal with Beata, though. I think there was also some culture gap situations going on, like sort of what we talked about earlier, how I grew up in a culture gap.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not Polish. I don't know anything about Polish culture, but she was very aggressive. Because English is a second language. Sometimes when you're trying to express yourself in a different language, it can come across differently than what you want it to come across, because you don't know how sometimes to express yourself in a way that is appropriate for the situation, only because it's your second language.
Okay, well, look, I don't have a second language, and the way that Beata was exactly how I would be.
Well, yes. Also, she was a parent who was seeing an injustice.
Back? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to sit there and tell me that I don't know something.
And she's a nurse. Not only is she a nurse, she's a mom. And then she also has maybe some cultural things going on, too.
Right.
So it was triple whammy there. But not for 1 second would I ever blame her. I mean, I think we would all be that way.
And honestly, I thought she was kind of nice about it. I mean...
Look, when my child got a weird assignment in Spanish class, I went crazy.
Look,
If this had happened, I don't know what would have happened.
I can't say what I want to say.
I know.
But
Look, I know.
y'all know I've been through my stuff, and when your child is
The world heard from you. Yeah.
you advocate for your child.
Yeah, totally.
And you know what? Sometimes you can't be whisper quiet about it. You have to speak to where people will listen.
Look, these were big consequences. This wasn't just somebody hurt my child, to hurt my child's feelings.
Right.
These are huge consequences. So it causes this huge, because of her aggression, and because that was also making the hospital upset with her, and maybe causing them to not let them talk to Maya. It caused this huge blow up. That broke my heart too, this huge fight that they had.
Well, this is what Philip Gillespie refers to as double downing. So basically, when the hospital does something that they shouldn't have done, okay, number one, they're passing judgment on this family just because it's not even a medical problem that they understand. I mean, if it was something they were well versed in and they were like, oh, this is absolutely inappropriate, then that would be one thing. They're telling these people, we don't even know about this disease. But then
she didn't even have it, what we don't know about.
But then they've passed this judgment. Well, now the mama's talking back and going, look, y'all are in the wrong here. This is not okay. Rather than going back and looking at themselves and going, okay, well, maybe we do need to talk to her doctor, and maybe we do need to take a step back, they double down. And they're like, oh, if you're gonna try to bow up on us, we're gonna bow up on you.
We're done here.
We're gonna go even harder.
And that's what they did.
It's basically bullying.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
So after this huge blow up with Jack, and after being told that she can't talk with Maya, they went to the shelter hearing, which is sort of the initial shelter.
Can we talk about this fight with Jack?
Yes, it's horrible.
It broke my heart.
It's horrible.
Okay, so they get back home, and Beata be recording everything.
I love it.
Like, she's even recording stuff at home because she was on the phone. And so she calls and she's like, look, I know that my daughter's upset. Like, I would like to speak with her. And they were like, oh, sorry, because of this, you can't speak with her. And she goes, well, I mean, she's my daughter. I need to know she's okay. And they were like, well, I mean, like, we can give you updates, but you can't speak to her on the phone. And so she was like, are you serious? And you hear Jack in the background going, hang up the phone. Stop talking.
Yeah.
Stop doing that. You're ruining this.
Well, they kept being told to play by the rules.
Well, they basically got him afraid. And so he's afraid. And I can totally understand.
I see both sides.
I can totally understand this because at some point you get to a point to where you're like, I just want my baby back. And maybe if I just act calm and say, you're right, or I overreacted, then they'll do the right thing. And so he's thinking, if we just back down, they'll do the right thing and this will be over. Where Beata's looking at it and going, they've proven they're not going to do the right thing.
Right.
So if we back down, they're going to have us in jail. Like, we have to let them know that we don't have any qualms about saying this is appropriate treatment for our daughter. If we back down and say, oh, you're right, we shouldn't have done so-and-so, we're child abusers. Right?
Yeah. That whole fight was, you know why it was heartbreaking is because we didn't know at that point what had happened to Beata, but you knew something had happened to Beata, and the pain in that man's voice when he was talking about this, and how he would look away, and he had this far off look in his eyes. It was so freaking heartbreaking.
Do you know what I love
because the destruction this hospital caused in this family, and not just temporary destruction, long-term destruction.
Do you know what I love about Beata though? Is through this, she did get frustrated, as anyone does. I never found her to be overly aggressive at any point. She spoke
appropriately aggressive.
Yeah, she was appropriately frustrated, and she spoke clearly. She didn't cuss anybody out. Like, she wasn't trying to be like some monster. Yeah. But during that fight, they're having this argument. Well, their little boy hears it, and he comes in, and he's like upset, and they're like, listen, Mom and Dad are having a conversation. You need to go out of the room. And the little boy goes, Mom, I just want a hug. I want a hug, which this so like what one of my kids would have done. And so he crawls up in her lap, and she's like, it's fine, like, it's fine. And he goes, I know it is, but, like, can you just not do what you're doing? Can you just, like, can you do what Dad says?
Settle down, yeah.
And settle down. And she goes, your dad's not always right. And I was like,
well, she was right.
I can totally relate. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not.
You tell your dad to settle down.
Yeah, I'm not a dumb woman.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not settling down.
Yeah.
I will stand up for my child.
So they go to their first hearing. It's called a shelter hearing, and no contact order was issued.
She fainted.
She fainted. She hit herself. She hit her head on the floor.
Yep.
The hospital changed Maya's treatment plan from the ketamine, which, by the way, was a whole other thing, because not only is she not a Beata and Jack not able to see their child, but they are also having to remember that the only thing that works for her is ketamine.
Yeah.
So they also have to contend with knowing that she's in pain and not getting better because they've decided to take her off her meds.
And nobody's medically able to advocate for her.
And nobody, right.
And
There's nobody.
And she can't medically advocate for herself.
That's right.
Because
she's 10.
She's a child.
Yes.
And they send her for a psych eval because they go, look, she's fainted at this thing. Like, this is
Something's
a classic,
wrong with this lady.
This is a classic Munchausen mom. Like,
right.
Let's send her for an eval.
Well, that's what they diagnosed. They diagnosed it.
And Beata said, well, I'll go to a psych eval. That's fine. So they sent her for a psych eval. And even the doctor came back and said, look, this woman does not have Munchausen's. Their psychiatrist that they sent her to said, this woman does not have Munchausen's. She is depressed because she's been separated from her child who is suffering.
But guess who didn't care? Dr. Sally Smith.
Right.
She did not care. She did not care.
And they said, well, that's fine, but we're still doing a no contact.
Also, by the way, first of all, finally, they let Jack finally go in and talk to her, and there's tons of rules. You can't talk to her about this. You can't talk to her about that. You can't tell her that she's coming home. You can't tell her that, like, tons of rules.
And you also can't discuss it with Beata. They also told him, you cannot discuss anything that happens.
That's right, because he said, and I follow the rules because I wanted to see my baby.
And he said that, you know, like, they told me we couldn't discuss anything. So basically, imagine he's going to visit their daughter, who is in incredible pain. Her mother's not able to see her. Her mother's not able to speak to her on the phone yet. And he comes back, and she goes, I mean, I know how frustrated I get after Philip talks to somebody and I wasn't there. Not even somebody I care about.
Sure.
And I go, hey, what'd y'all talk about? And he'll be like, oh, nothing.
Yeah.
I will get so mad. And I'll be like, I know you did talk about something.
My mom
for
was
an
just
hour.
telling this story, coincidentally, yesterday, that I was born a month early. So I was premature, and I was in an incubator for a month, 5 weeks. I was in the hospital for 5 weeks.
Aww.
And at that time, I'm 100 years old. So at that time, they did not let mothers, like now they let them go back there and hold the baby and bond and all that.
Right.
But back then, my mom was sitting at home for 5 weeks without me.
Yeah.
But my dad was a med tech at the time. This was before he became a doctor. So he had access. He knew the nurses and stuff, and he had access to go see me every day.
Mm-hmm.
So he would go to work and he would go see me. And she was just so worried that I would never know her, or that when I finally got home, I wouldn't know her.
wouldn't be
and that
bonded.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one morning, my dad he would work 11 to 7. At 11 night, 7 in the morning, and he came home, and she was like, did you get to see her today? And he said,
No.
He said, yeah, she asked me for my wife. You start crying. Isn't that funny? Yeah, that's not funny. It kind of reminds me of that. Like, it was just, and he was just kidding, of course.
Yeah.
But in this situation, like, they're putting a wedge in a marriage.
Oh, yeah. Like, she was so upset. And, of course, it's like she doesn't not want him to be able to visit with Maya because that's the only familiar contact she has. But at the same time, you know, there has to be some hurt there that he's seeing her and she's not. And also that he's not carrying the torch for her.
Right.
You know, that he's not there fighting the battle for her.
He's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
But he's scared he's going to lose visitation.
Yeah.
And basically...
he's in a bad spot.
And basically, they sit him down. They have a police officer come into one of these visits and go, hey, if it came between seeing your daughter and seeing your wife, who would you choose?
That's right.
He said his daughter.
Yeah.
Because what else is he going to say?
That's right.
Because if he doesn't, then he's complicit with the Munchausen mom.
That's right. And they asked him all kinds of uncomfortable questions. They were wanting him to guarantee that he would keep Maya away from Beata.
Right. If we return her to your custody, will you leave your wife?
Yes. And he said yes.
And he said, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The other thing that I got pretty upset with was Dr. Kirkpatrick, which was their physician that diagnosed him with diagnosed Maya with CRPS. When he said, hey, Beata, I just need to let you know, this is going to be a very slow, painful death for Maya, because if she doesn't have her medicine, if it's not properly treated, this will get worse and worse, which is probably not what he should have said to this woman who was battling, whose child was in the hospital she had no access to.
Yeah.
I mean, that just compounded everything for her, right? To know that, man, I'm fighting so hard and nothing I'm doing is going to help this child and she's going to die because I've not been successful at this. That could not have gone, that
could not
must
have helped her depression at all.
That's right.
Well, and also that parent advocate, did you hear her? She said, hey, just play the game.
Play the game.
Do what they want to do. Say what they want you to say. Roll over and take it. And then once you get your daughter back, just don't go back to that hospital.
Well, because what's better? Is it better to let her suffer now for short term or not have you for the long term?
Right. And this is
well, neither one of those two are good options.
Right. And this is the very thing that keeps us in the state that we're in. Okay?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people who, quote unquote, were my friends that basically in my situation advised me, just let it go.
Just let it go.
Just let it go.
That's right.
Because, I mean,
this stuff happens.
What does it matter? She's going to be gone next year.
Yeah.
What does it matter? What does it matter?
It matters for the next person.
How about it matters for your kid?
Yeah.
How about that? How about for Beata? It mattered for, what if her son was in that situation?
That's right.
What if her nephew or even any kid,
any child
is in that?
Because as it turns out, there were quite a few of those children.
Right.
Yeah. We'll get to that in a second.
Later on.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. So then we meet Kathy Beatty, the social worker, the stalker, who told Maya that she was going to adopt her.
Oh my gosh, this woman. This woman.
Holy smokes.
She
had also been arrested for child abuse.
Yeah, she also sat on the phone calls. So finally, they do allow
Maya to talk,
to have phone conversations.
Yeah.
But they're on speakerphone, monitored by this woman who wants to take her child.
She told Maya that she would adopt her.
Yeah, she said, hey, listen, she was telling Maya, hey, basically, your mom's abusing you. You're probably not going to go back to her. Do you want me to adopt you?
I'll take care of it.
I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
But first, let me take some pictures of you with your clothes off, in your underwear, with you screaming and crying.
Yeah. And I'm not going to give you any medicine.
Have you ever in your life?
It's astonishing. The things that we learned, that we saw in this movie, it's astonishing.
And how are you not held accountable for that? How is that not child abuse?
Kathy at some point said, I don't like Beata's attitude, so you can't talk to her anymore.
Oh yeah, after every phone conversation, she's like, hey baby, how are you feeling? I love you. Are you okay? And she said, what are they giving you for pain?
Mom, you can't say that.
Yeah, and she goes.
That's how she would interrupt it.
Mom, redirect. Redirect. And she'd be like, what is she taking? And she was like, oh, they're just giving me Ambien. And she's like, that's not gonna. And she was like, I know, I'm really struggling. And so she'd be like, redirect, Mom. And then after that, she was like, this is not productive or appropriate for her. They don't need to have a conversation anymore.
So they go finally to the judge, before the judge again, 87 days in state custody. Almost 3 months. And they get to the judge, and the judge consistently, because there's so much corruption, right? I mean, that's exactly what's happening. Somebody knows somebody, and or maybe there isn't corruption, and they're just so scared of being sued otherwise, or they're so scared that the child is being abused that they're not considering that she's not. If you give them the benefit of the doubt, which I don't, I mean, there's definitely corruption.
Oh, well, now I remember exactly why she stopped the phone calls. Is because she said, baby, did you get my letter?
Oh, what letter?
And she said, what letter? And she was like, I sent you a letter. And the woman, she said, I gave it to Miss Kathy. And she was like, oh, no, I never received a letter. And she was like, yes, I gave it to so-and-so who was to give it to you.
Yeah.
And she goes, oh, well, you'll have to talk to her. There's no letter.
And by the way, you can't talk to her anymore.
And by the way, you're done.
Yep.
No more contact.
So they go to the judge, and the judge says, you still can't see her. 87 days, state custody, 10 years old, little girl.
Right.
Out of the blue. She didn't even get to say goodbye to her because her dad had taken her to the ER while she was working. So originally when she went to the hospital, it wasn't like, I'll see you in a little bit, baby.
Right.
It was just like, let's take her to the hospital.
And she even asked the judge, she said, hey, listen, I've not seen my baby in 87 days. Can I at least just hug? She's here. Mm-hmm. Can I at least just hug her and tell her goodbye? And he said, I don't think that's appropriate.
So, of course, she is beside herself. So they go home. They're supposed to go to some birthday party with their other little child. And she said, I don't feel like it. And so Dad takes Kyle and they come back. He didn't see her when he comes back. He just thought she was asleep, having a migraine or something. And
the bedroom door was closed.
Right. So he just left her alone because it had been a pretty awful day.
And look, I know some people would look at that and think, oh, like, that's weird.
No, it's not weird at all.
It's not weird at all. I'm that way. If I tell Philip I do not feel good, I'm going to bed. I just want to be left alone.
Also, they're not on the best terms either. They're struggling with each other.
They're sleeping in separate bedrooms.
Yeah, they're struggling. They're struggling.
Yeah.
So it's not weird. I mean,
right.
It's not weird at all. And definitely if she's not feeling good. And also, he knows what just happened today.
Right.
Because he's getting a chance to see Maya,
and
but she's not. So he knows she's not doing well. She really needs to rest. One thing leads to another, and Beata's brother comes to the house.
Well, they had been home for a couple of hours, and he said he heard a knock at the door and was kind of startled.
Yeah,
because it's nighttime, and it was her brother.
I can't get in touch with Beata.
Right.
And for whatever reason, he goes into the room that she's in and discovers that she has hung herself.
Yes.
So let me tell you about Beata. She leaves no stone unturned. She left a note that was point by point, everything that the reason she did this, the person who was responsible. Hey, judge, you're the reason that I have just killed myself.
Dear judge,
you are the very reason that this is happening.
Yes.
And
in that one, she did call somebody an a-hole, but I don't blame her.
Right.
How about you get to?
Yes, right, and that right.
It was not I'm killing myself because I'm so depressed. It was I'm killing myself because I know if I'm gone, you'll give my baby back.
She was a sacrifice, yes. Yeah. And but there's also the element of I don't see a way out of this.
Yeah.
They are not consistently one time after another. The judge would say, you can't see her. You can't talk to her. You can't hug her. And you definitely, this is a Munchausen by proxy situation.
Yeah.
And there's no way out. And for her, a person who struggled with infertility, who Maya was a reward of years of prayers and trying and money and effort. And her whole life was spent trying to help this child through her illness. There's no way out of this.
Yeah, she literally traded her life for her child's.
If there's anything I've learned in my adult life is that anyone who takes their own life is not, when I was younger, I would always say, what cowards. And I realize now that that is absolutely not the case. When someone takes their own life, it is out of desperation.
It's desperation.
It is desperation.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she did. And I was watching those children at that funeral and, the family, and it was just
heartbreaking.
Horrific. You can't even put into words the horror that you're watching because it was all avoidable and completely the fault of this Sherry, whatever her name is, the Smith. Sherry, whatever.
And I mean, not
Sally
only
Smith.
has this 10-year-old baby who's gone through horrific pain, been separated from her family for almost 3 months, she comes home to her mother being gone forever.
She's in a wheelchair at the funeral, bawling her eyes out.
Yeah.
And then here's what angered me more. Once Beata died, Maya was allowed to go to the CRPS specialist, not Dr. Kirkpatrick, another CRPS specialist who was like, oh, yeah, she definitely has this.
And they released her immediately.
And they gave her to the dad.
So they did exactly what Beata said they would do.
92 days in state custody.
They did exactly what Beata said they would do.
She was 87 days in state custody when Mom killed herself.
Right.
92 days in state custody.
So 5 days later.
5 days later.
Yeah.
They said, oh, you know what? You really do
and
have CRPS.
There's probably a weekend in there.
I am so upset by this.
Yeah.
I'm so freaking angry about it. So they're interviewing them, it looks like in 2020, 4 years later. I think that's what the screen said, that it was 2020. And Sweet Maya is just so damaged. You know, there's no joy in her. You know, she's a beautiful teenager she's doing okay. Like, she still has flare-ups and stuff. She's doing okay. But
she is Beata, though.
She is. She's amazing.
She's taken after her mama.
But even after her release, after they let her go, after those 92 days, they were like, we're going to let you go. You definitely have CRPS, but you are not allowed to take ketamine.
Yeah.
The only drug that works, you're not allowed to take it.
We're not going to give that to you.
Right. So this is the point where this journalist comes in. And she says, this is an interesting story. And she wrote it all up. She had, tried to get statements from everybody. And she wrote the story and clicked publish. And she was like, I'm moving on to my next story. This was a crazy thing that happened.
Yeah.
Well, the next day she logs in and she's got 100 messages from parents who have been through the exact same thing that Beata and the Kowalski family went through. And they all could tell the same story about Sally Smith.
Yeah.
It was the exact same doctor.
Right.
And Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. I'm going to say that name over and over because people, don't take your children to this hospital.
Johns Hopkins.
All Children's Hospital in Florida. Do not take your child to this hospital. And definitely, if you see Dr. Smith.
If you see Sally Smith, hit the road.
Put your child under the bed.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Do whatever you can to get the heck out of there.
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
That's right. That's right. So this is sort of where we find out what a freaking rock star Beata was, because what was happening with all these parents that were coming out of the woodwork is they gave up, right? But not because they gave up for the sake of giving up. They were told to give up and that they would get their children back if they went along with the case plan.
Right.
And the case plan was just a series of check boxes. You go to this class, you do this, you admit that you're wrong. Also, make sure that you don't sue us.
You know what it was? It was basically just punishment.
Yeah.
They were like,
well, it was what they think should be done.
We're going to punish you with all these things so that you don't do this again.
That's right. Do not come back to this hospital like this.
Do not come back here
again. And also, if you go to this case plan and we give you your child back, you waive your right to sue this hospital.
Right.
Well, Beata was like, I'm not signing this.
Yeah,
I'm not going by this case plan.
Case plan.
I didn't do this.
Yeah.
So all these 100 people, there was one guy who was in jail for almost a year. He was in
jail.
Imprisoned for almost a year, accused of abusing his child.
Yeah.
And all of them signed case plans, so none of them could sue the hospital. But guess who didn't sign a case plan?
Oh, Beata.
Oh, Beata.
She said,
she was like, heck no.
I ain't going to do it.
That's right. Then they find out, this is the kicker, Johns Hopkins, All Children's Hospital, worst hospital of all time.
Yes.
And that includes Cooper Green.
Hey, now. Cooper Green is a good establishment. They will take out your gallbladder for anything that ails you. That's what my daddy used to say. He'd say,
it's buy one, get one free at Cooper
listen,
Green.
He'd say, now listen, you go to Cooper Green, but you ain't coming out of there with a gallbladder.
Cooper Green. Just look that up, folks.
Runny
Cooper
nose,
Green, Birmingham.
Runny nose, take that gallbladder out.
You feel like $1 million when you leave.
He said, I think they were selling those things on the black market.
There's a black market for it, for sure.
Yeah.
Turns out that Johns Hopkins had been charging the Kowalski's insurance company $50,000 for treating CRPS.
They did such a great
job. The disease they said she did not have.
Did not have.
I mean,
yeah.
You know what I loved most? Let me go back to these people that came out of the woodwork, the 100 people. That one lady who was so petty, and she was amazing. She sent Sally Smith a Christmas card every year with her kids.
Yeah, she did. She's like, we're doing great, Sally. How are you? Merry Christmas.
I thought that was so awesome. So they did. So they sued.
But this is what happens when someone who's brave, that doesn't care more about what people will think of them or how it's going to affect them.
And also because they're right and just.
Then the truth and justice stand up and do something. It causes the people who felt like that they didn't have a voice to all of a sudden get a voice.
That's right.
You know, like it's that it really does just take one person to stand up and say, it's not right.
We're not doing this.
We're not doing this.
Yep.
Like we're going to tell the truth and we're not going to hide, and you're not going to make us feel ashamed of ourselves for advocating for our child.
That's right.
Yeah.
I wish that we had a resolution right now. They had a trial set. They had a trial date set, and at the very last minute, and this poor family had been really looking forward to it for months and months and months. And at the last minute, like that's just what happens in the legal world. At the last minute, they canceled it. But the reason that they postponed it is because the lower court was trying to decide if the Kowalskis could sue for punitive damages. Punitive damages are damages that money that they're going to get for things that might have happened. Like
money, yeah.
Yes. And that's where the big money comes in, right? Like they could sue them for, say, the $50,000 for insurance, or they could have like a hard number. But punitive damages, that'd be $50 million for their pain and suffering, right?
Right.
So they postponed the trial because the lower court was trying to decide that. I think that's right, and someone can correct me if that's wrong, but I think that's right.
And how about somebody did die?
Somebody did die for no
because
reason.
of their actions.
Yes. And somebody continued to suffer.
Right.
The child continued to suffer,
And
not just at the loss of her.
Continues to
Yes.
suffer. Yeah.
Right. But, I mean, she has her illness. That illness made her suffer, and then the loss of her mother. And, oh, my gosh, she was amazing in those depositions. She said, you have the audacity to ask me why I don't want to go to the hospital ever.
She said, are you insane?
Have you lost your freaking mind?
What is wrong? I was like, there's Bianca.
Beata. Yeah. They were, and that brother, that sweet brother, he has been through so much too, just watching losing his mother and watching his sister go through this. I mean, but I felt my heart broke for them when they didn't have the trial, because that's sort of, I mean, they've just been waiting for it to get justice for their mother. But now it's set for September 2023, so it's coming up in the next few months.
I'm so excited.
I am so excited for them, because there is zero chance that anybody can look at these facts. But you know what I did read yesterday, and I'm ticked off about it. What Johns Hopkins is going to try to do is they are accusing Beata of writing ketamine prescriptions illegally.
Yeah.
But hey, P.S., if I'm on that jury, I'm going to say, I don't care.
And hey,
I would say I would write as many ketamine prescriptions as I could to help my child.
And hey, P.S., they have a doctor that said I prescribed it.
Yeah.
There's no getting
They're just going to try to discredit Beata.
And you know what makes me so mad is the only reason they're pushing it off is because they want them to give up.
They want them to give up.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
They try to push it off, and they try to make people forget, because what do human beings do?
Yeah, they don't know people like us.
When it's not happening right then, then you just go, oh, well, maybe we should just let it go.
Yeah.
They never met a Beata or an Amarilys or a Misty.
They have never.
They have never.
No.
And so how about, my favorite saying is, I got all the time in the world. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah.
And Beata...
And I'm right.
Literally gave up every day of her life to make sure nobody forgot about this.
Yeah. I'm excited for what they've got coming. I mean, I know they would trade it all for their mom.
Absolutely.
And I totally get that, but I hope that they get what they have coming. So it is, by the time this documentary is over, you're heartbroken, because those kids are heartbroken, and they're so disappointed about this postponement. And, just, it's so horrible, the things that happen to this family. And it's not even just, hey, this is bad luck. It's things that could have been prevented that horrible people intentionally did.
But how about Sally Smith got wise and she settled out of court?
I wish I could see that settlement.
Now, she wouldn't be on this documentary. She would not comment, but she said, let me go on and pay up, because I don't want to have to sit on a witness stand.
I hope she gets her license pulled.
And let them hear all the things that I actually did do.
Well, look, you don't want to be Sally Smith and be the star of the #1 trending documentary on Netflix right now.
Or on the #1 trending podcast about documentaries. I don't want to brag, y'all. We kind of famous.
We're a little bit famous.
We're a little bit famous.
Guys, don't watch this documentary. Just
Listen
let
to
this be
podcast.
enough. Let this be enough. I'm telling you.
Share only this podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Do not watch this. It's just so horrible. It's so horrible. But anyway, there you have it. I was so mad at Misty that she made me watch this.
She was so mad at me. But look, we had some lighthearted moments. We always worry when we do like really deep stuff like this that we don't want to.
How are we gonna make this funny?
Well, how are we gonna brighten somebody's day? Because that's at the end of the day, that's our goal, right? But we found some lightheartedness. Philip scratched his junk after he came out of anesthesia.
Well, I don't know how lighthearted that is.
Well,
I'm sure that he loves it. You just said that.
Oh,
He'll never know.
He doesn't listen.
He'll never know.
He is not.
And now my mom knows.
He is not one of our Tens and Tens listeners.
No, but my mom is. So.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Mother Amarilys.
All right. I guess that does it.
Yeah. What are we going to do next?
I don't know.
Please.
Something happened.
Listen, Philip never cares nothing about On the Dock.
Okay.
And literally tonight he said, will y'all please do American Gladiators?
Yes,
That's the
absolutely.
new one on Netflix.
Done and done.
I loved American Gladiators.
Is it a series or is it just an hour?
No, I think it's just an hour.
Okay, good. I like it when it's a movie versus a docuseries.
But I never,
hey, do you know what I just watched?
If I'm giving you good information or not.
Love and, oh crap, what is the name of it? Love and
Death?
Death?
Oh,
Yes.
I did too, girl.
Did you watch it?
I watched it every week it came out, yes.
Okay, I just binged it, finished binging it today.
Yeah.
And
P.S. We have released the Candy episode from Patreon, so if y'all want to go back and listen to that.
yeah, it's on as a bonus.
Yeah.
All right. It's very different than the Hulu one.
It
the
is.
Hulu was so campy
It is
and
different.
funny.
Yeah.
And this really humanized her.
Yeah.
And it was not a, when I finished watching Candy on Hulu, I thought, well, this woman is crazy. And she has slaughtered this woman for 47 whacks on her face. And now I realize maybe that's not exactly what happened.
Now my opinion of it has totally changed.
Oh, my goodness.
Because I think I was so enamored by the humor of like how stupid it was.
Yes.
Like not
so campy.
Now, don't get me wrong, it was a great series. But
Yeah.
the entertainment value was what
it was very lighthearted.
what you were there for. And so I didn't really listen to the facts as much as I should have. Where on this one they went in depth with the facts, and now I'm kind of like, okay, Candy, I think it was self-defense.
I think it was too.
I do too.
I totally buy it.
I'm sorry, Candy. I shouldn't have said that.
I know. I'm very sorry.
You didn't.
And she didn't have that curly hair in this movie.
Thank God.
She was.
Although the first one was more accurate to the real life.
Yes,
but
those are not very attractive people. I don't know if
Yeah.
it was just that it was the 70s or what.
Well, they all looked elderly in their 20s.
Yes,
don't
they
know.
did.
Why they do that?
I don't know why they were all like fighting over each other about who was sleeping with who.
I know that's right.
Who
Like I'm
cares?
just trying to sleep with my husband, and that's enough for me.
Yes. Also, if I was trying to sleep with somebody else, they would probably look better than my husband.
Right?
Do you know?
Why are you gonna go downgrade?
Right. Right. I totally didn't get
Some
that.
things are worse than breathing through your mouth.
Okay.
I guess it just depends on what you like.
I guess.
So like,
Anyway, so American Gladiator it is.
all right, American Gladiators, spandex and muscles and competition.
All right. Happy 4th.
Happy 4th.
Bye.
Bye.